So,
Steve, did you say Stanton Friedman passed away?
oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I guess I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear that. And
That's
so I'll
okay.
have to cross him off my guest list.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Encounters USA with author Matthew Hines. If you're looking for alien incidents, Bigfoot brouhahas, or Dogman dealings, we have the podcast interviews, field research, and field interviews you're gonna love. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and check us out on Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Encounters USA. Today, this is going to be such an amazing show and podcast. Today, I have Steve Leumbruno, and we're going to be talking about the Black Triangle UFOs. It's going to be an amazing show, so I hope you guys are going to stick around. So, before anything else happens, let's get Steve on here. I almost called you Leumbruno. So, Steve, welcome to Encounters USA.
Thanks, Matt.
Steve, I ran into you at a MUFON conference a couple weeks ago up in where was that? That was North Shore. It was, what's the name of that town?
Kenmore.
Yeah, that's right, Kenmore. It's such a small town, you don't even remember the name. So we met at this conference, and in one of my previous podcast, actually with Kevin Moore, I was complaining about that because I thought that the level, I thought it was like this is junior high school stuff. I could have seen this all on the internet at home and saved myself some time. But after meeting Steve, well, the whole game has changed. Now, we're going to be talking today about something that we touched on in the show with Kevin Moore, and that is about the secret space program. And so I think before too long, I'm going to be eating a big helping of crow, because I think that some of the ideas I've had about the program may have been completely wrong, and really wrong when we find out what Steve has to say. So Steve Leumbruno, let's start off with talk a little bit about, I'd like people to know a little bit about before we talk about your UFO stuff, what's your background, your education, etc.?
I have a bachelor's of science in psychology, and I did a lot of research with PhDs, primarily with working with parent-child interaction studies, trying to help people that don't have the skills, parenting skills. But I developed kind of a critical thinking process through all that. And I also work, I have a licensed respiratory care practitioner license, so I work in a hospital and a clinic setting. So I see a lot of patients, and I just have to, I'm like a super sleuth in a way. So I have to kind of use my head a lot to kind of figure out problems, basically. So because of that training, I think when I had my experiences, it kind of just threw me into that research mode. Mm-hmm. To try to figure out what the hell is this, you know? Mm-hmm. So I kind of come more from a mainstream science background. So
yeah, and that's great, because that's what we really on Encounters USA. We really try to stick with science as much as possible. Now, yesterday, Steve and I sat down at Victor's in Redmond, Washington, and we had a wonderful conversation. And I went there I wasn't feeling very well. And I thought, well, 15 minutes and I'll go home. So 2.5 hours later, I go home and my wife is, where have you been? So I went, my gosh, it's been 2.5 hours. So hopefully we can not do that with this podcast. But I learned so many things. And Steve, the first thing I'm going to tell you is I went home and I watched oh boy, don't have brain lock now. I watched the guy on the 0 Point Energy,
Mark Mccandlish.
Mark Mccandlish, that's right. So I watched two videos of his. I watched the 0 Point Energy, and I was absolutely astounded. So I don't know, Steve, did you see my podcast with Kevin Moore?
Yes, I think part of it.
Okay, well, this is where the part of the podcast today where I eat a whole bunch of crow. And if you don't know what that means, I'm going to be eating my own words, because what I've found out in this, my Encounters USA endeavors, my suspect was that a lot of this secret space program stuff is just pretty much fabricated. It's just a way for people to make money because you can't really test it. And then, Steve, after talking to you, I found out, no, there is a lot more to this secret space program than anybody even thought. And I was so astounded by the evidence. So anyway, so we're going to get into that. So, Steve, let's talk. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about how you got interested in the UFO topic?
Well, my brother was interested in it quite a bit, and I don't know, I really wasn't interested when my brother was really into it. I kind of listened to him, but it didn't make much sense to me. And until I started seeing, I had a couple of really poignant sightings. I mean, I had seen some strange things going on in the town I'm in now. Could not explain it. I did report that to MUFON. But then years later, I actually had an actual encounter, and that's why I love being on your show. Your show is the title of what happened to me, Encounters USA. I mean, it happened in 2009, and I was driving home from visiting my family, and I'm also an Air Force brat. My dad was 30 years in the Air Force, and I lived at McCord Air Force Base. I think we did two rotations there. But I was driving past McCord, and I saw these C-17s flying over the freeway, and I thought it was kind of odd. You know, you usually don't see them that low and that many. There was at least two that were kind of going back and forth. I think one went across twice as I was driving, and one went across once across I-5, Interstate 5. And as I got closer to Tacoma Mall, I saw another object, and I just assumed, C-17. And then when I looked closer, it was like a giant triangle, massive. I mean, it was blocks long. And It was just hovering maybe 100, 200 feet next to or above the road. I think it's near Oak Street there and Tacoma Mall. And I literally could not believe my eyes. I mean, I almost ran into somebody, literally, because I just was drawn to it. I was like, holy cow, what's going on here? And it was just didn't go away. It was just hovering there. And this was right around 7:30, 8 o'clock, late summer. Wasn't quite twilight, but the sun was setting. There was some clouds in the sky on the horizon, but it was pretty much clear. So, and it was just really black with lots of just really bright white lights underneath that were shining down, but they really didn't have any pattern. They looked random, you know. Mm-hmm. So I just kept watching, and when I got home, I looked on MUFON. I immediately went on MUFON, and that thing has been seen all over the Puget Sound, going back to the inception of MUFON. I looked on their map. They have a map where it shows where all the sightings are. Giant triangle. So, and I think MUFON was started in the 60s, right? Late 60s, 69 maybe. Yeah. So it was intriguing to me. I wasn't the first person, but boy, did it shake me up.
Yeah. You know, this is on this show, one thing that everybody has in common, except for myself, is that everybody's had their own encounter. And when you have an encounter, then it seems to be, at least for everybody on the show, it doesn't go away. So then immediately people become researchers. So you started digging in, and you found some amazing stuff, and a lot of it had to do with your own background, your own father. Let's talk. All right. Well, so on this UFO, first of all, it was twilight. What was the Seattle traffic's horrible. I'm just used to the bumper to bumper stuff. What was the traffic like? Were you on I-5?
Yeah, it was moderate. It was moving. We were 60, 65, everyone.
But nobody got in a collision or right?
No,
Do you think?
I think I was the only one that noticed it. Maybe, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
Because it didn't seem like anybody else. And I should have pulled over. I mean, I should have gone right over there and checked it out. It was really stupid, but I already missed that turn. There's a turn off there, and I would have had to go downtown and cut back over, and I had to be at work the next day, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I look back on that, and I should have just said, screw it, I'll call in sick or something.
Yeah.
I need to find what that thing is. I knew how to get there, you know, where it was hovering.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough choice, you know. See the UFO or end up in Tacoma. That's I would have done the same thing. All right. So did you get any confirmation from anybody else that they had seen it that day? No. Okay. Okay. So, and then
or denial in a way. I mean, that's kind of a reaction a lot of people have, I think, when they see something so incredible. I think I was like that. I was like, I can't be true, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
can you describe the formation? I know it was probably pretty hard, but what was the formation? I mean, you had C-17s in front. Did you have them in the back also of the craft?
They were prior to when I saw the UFO.
Okay.
They were the biggest things I saw prior to that thing in the sky that evening. And that was probably about maybe 2 or 3 minutes before I saw the UFO. They were closer to McCord.
Okay.
And that's another thing. You never see a C-17 flying over Tacoma Mall.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen one. They don't come that low. They usually stay on the reservation there,
mm-hmm.
you know, or the reservation. Maybe they go over Bridgeport Way down there. But
mm-hmm.
I've never seen them flying above the Tacoma Mall, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing that clued me in. It's, wait a minute, you know. But then when I had a probably good 45 seconds to a minute to really keep glancing. And then even after I made the turn, there's a turn there that goes down to the city center,
mm-hmm.
Tacoma, heading north.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it in the rearview mirror. I mean,
wow.
The rearview mirror. It was huge. It was aircraft carrier size. I swear. It was like that big.
Wow. Amazing.
More in the, more kind of going toward the horizon, the length of it, it was narrower. It wasn't like it was more isosceles kind of,
mm-hmm.
shape. The larger end was closer to me and the pointed end was further away.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have been perspective too. Maybe it was rectangular too. I'm not sure,
Mm-hmm.
It's so big that,
was it flat? Could you tell?
It was flat. You mean flat black. It was kind of very, it wasn't reflective.
Okay.
And it did seem like it was structured underneath, wasn't like smooth,
Mm-hmm.
It had like things pointing out and of course the lights kind of gave that off. It was lit up in a way because all those it had all these really high intensity white lights underneath
mm-hmm.
it that were just random. They were mm-hmm. just kind of scattered around. It was strange, mm-hmm. almost like stars, almost like it looked like if you looked up at the sky and looked at stars, kind of like that.
All right. So for the UFO intense person, this is the TR-3B, right? I mean, this is the classic TR-3B, except I'm not sure that TR-3B is supposed to be that big. So I don't know. All right, so let's get into you've had a couple other sightings, but before we get into the sightings you had in Edmonds, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your father's experience and what he did in the Air Force and what he told you. What was your legacy?
Yeah, I had 3 longer conversations with him over the years. One in '83. And where he was I could tell he was very upbeat after a trip. He would go on these trips. I took him to one. I remember all the time because I took him to the airport one time. He was going California for something, and it was the day Mount St. Helens erupted. We heard it on the radio, but about a year before that, a few years after that, it was close to his retirement. I think it was 1982. he was so excited, and we were just standing in the living room, and he says, you know that the Air Force has nuclear-powered aircraft. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I saw when I was on the Inspector General's team. He was on Inspector General's team. He was gone quite a bit when I was younger. He would travel. And he would be gone for 2 weeks at a time, and this went on for like 2.5 years. And so he traveled all around the world. But this particular time, I think it was in 1978, he saw these, he didn't say what they looked like, though. He just said that they were nuclear powered and they were fully functional. I remember him saying that, fully functional. It wasn't like they were testing them. And it was down in Mojave. That's all he said, Mojave Desert. And I was kind of like, well, at that time, I'm like in college, and I knew it all, kind of attitude. And I just kind of blew it off. I said, nah, that can't be. I know more than what he's telling me. You know how arrogant you can be.
All right, Steve. So
I didn't ask many questions,
On the nuclear powered craft, just so people know, what are the limitations of using nuclear power for an aircraft?
Well, radiation exposure. I know that's and I think in the 90s it was funny because the Clinton administration had actually put out a statement. I remember that when he said that the testing of nuclear powered aircraft not allowed, anything nuclear powered not allowed. And I thought that's strange, not allowed to fly over the U.S. at all, So I don't know. I just get these bits and nuggets over the years, of information that seem to be like, whoa, it makes you like. But then I just, you kind of dismiss it. And then of course, anything nuclear powered. I know nuclear powered submarines. I've been on one. I've been on was a Nautilus or not a Nautilus. Yeah, they used to have all these Navy air shows. My dad was in the Navy for a while during the Vietnam era. So we got to go and see a lot of naval stuff, here in Seattle, actually. He worked, one of the piers down there. But, and if you get into this UFO business, you find out that the U.S. Navy has a lot to do with a lot of these sightings, or especially Area 51 or Groom Lake. It's under the Department of the Navy.
Yeah.
Which, very interesting, to me. But so the weight of the craft, it has to be lead shielded, I would think, if you're going to protect the crew. So it just doesn't seem to add up, And I know that recently they've disclosed information about nuclear-powered spacecraft that they tested that they supposedly never finished, that were highly, dangerous in the 60s, I think. I don't know if you've seen these documentaries where they were using, they would just detonate small thermonuclear devices behind like a big absorption chamber that would propel the craft, and it just keep, this was an actual study. The Atomic Energy Commission, or I don't know, it was down there in Mexico. Yeah, there's a whole documentary about it, and they supposedly scrubbed it. It's too dangerous. I mean,
if that thing crashes.
What's that?
If that thing crashes, it's basically a dirty bomb. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know Stanton Friedman. He worked on nuclear-powered aircraft, and he said that they had perfected something before he passed away. I saw a lecture in 2018 where he just spilled the beans. He was just talking about everything that they did, and then they supposedly just said, "We know it works, but we're not going to do anything with it."
What was the ultimate result of his Air Force career and you?
Well, in later years, my brother, I noticed, we'd get together, and my brother was giving him books and, talking to my dad. My dad would not budge. He wouldn't talk about the subject. It was very it was interesting that he had talked about this stuff when he was in the military, but then after he retired, it was like, no, you don't talk about that thing. And I remember, after I had my encounters, when I was starting to dig, I was doing the same thing. I was trying to ask him, because of course he was in the Air Force, and he told me, I said, "You told me about this stuff." He goes, "No." He would just kind of dismiss it. And then one evening, I think I showed him a video out of the blue, and I could tell that kind of perked him up. He was really attentive. He didn't walk out of the room or anything. He watched the whole thing. But at the end of that, I said, well, what do you think, Dad? I mean, come on, aren't you going to, inside I was saying, come on, tell me you know something, And he was like, all I'll say is that we send things out into space. There's no reason why someone else wouldn't be sending things here. And he goes, and I don't want you to bring the subject up anymore.
Wow.
He ended it right there. And then, of course, when I had my video, and I showed him my video, my Edmund's Lights video, he just got up and walked out of the room. He wouldn't talk about it.
Wow.
That was really strange. So I don't know if maybe he got a warning, or I don't know. I don't know.
You're not going to second guess what was going through his mind?
He might have, maybe when he retired, it seemed like after he retired, the subject kind of closed. So maybe he did sign a non-disclosure statement.
Yeah.
That's very possible. Because he was 30 years. He was deputy wing commander.
Wow.
At Air Force Base when he retired, yeah.
Wow. The penalties for, for the level of information that he had, I would think the level for disclosing that information is your death, not just his, or not even his, but they've been told, we'll go after your families. So
yeah, that's probably true. But I think I'm harmless, and I've learned that a lot of this they want people to talk about now. I think they want, in a way, they want to, and we'll get it. Maybe we can get into that because why are they flying? If it is advanced technology, why are they flying it over Tacoma? Why are they flying it over Edmonds? It's interesting.
Okay,
and I've found some people that have kind of answered that. Speculatively, So
okay, so
he also, when he retired, he gave me his master's thesis, which I thought was very interesting. Which I kind of just put aside. I didn't really think much of it, but years later, it makes a lot more sense.
And what's the title?
The title is "The Need for Command Assignment for Military Space Missions."
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information in here about the 1950s and how we had made a huge leap forward. It's in here. And these are like mainstream news articles that he found. And this is during the Johnson administration. It's like 1965. So I think in a way he was trying to let me know, hey, yeah. But I kind of ignored it. And I don't think I ever showed this to my brother.
Okay.
So I gave it to me. But it's about 50 pages. And there's a lot of dry information in here about, the Soviets. And it's interesting read, if you're interested in this topic and if you have a science mind. But
otherwise, it's dry as the Arizona desert.
I definitely got the genes because my dad was just as, thought-provoking, I guess.
So is there anything in there to indicate that they're not talking about Apollo missions that would come a few years later? Are they talking about some kind of different command and control for some different programs?
It was definitely space station, related.
Okay.
That's what it was really about. And I think that in there he shows the Johnson administration had white world-wise, wanted Congress to give him money or a tax base to build a space station, like a military space station. So at least that, there's a little mention about colonization of the moon, and Mars and stuff in there, but those are just articles that he referenced, and everybody was talking about that back then. I think ever since Sputnik, all of a sudden it was like, we're going to go to the moon and Mars. That was like the first thing on the list. And Venus. I think they talked about Venus quite a bit. I think the Russians did send successful probes to the surface of Venus. I've seen a few pictures, but they only last like hours or something.
Yeah.
They just get dissolved or something.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So you're going to get me off on all different tangents. So the triangle UFOs in Edmonds, Washington. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I remember that date. That was January 13th, 2014. And my girlfriend at the time, she's a photographer, and she just got this great tablet phone. We were just going down to Anthony's to go to dinner, and we decided to walk. This is about 7:30 in January, and it was warm. It was like almost 60. It was in the 50s. no wind, and so we decided just to walk down. She lived downtown Edmond, so we just walked by the ferry. And as we there's like a little shortcut on the beach there, and she knew about it, I knew about it, to get over to the boathouse area. And so when we were making that turn, she was in front of me. She turned back for a second and said, "What's that?" And it was just east of us, not over the water, but over Edmonds. In fact, there's a railroad track. There's two sets of railroad tracks. There's one closer in, and there's another set where all the coal trains go, along the waterfront. Mm-hmm. We were by those train tracks, and these giant, we estimated 100 to 200 foot triangles were just hovering feet above railroad track. Maybe 10, 12 feet above railroad tracks. And they were just starting to kind of rotate. They were like they were going into a mode. And they looked like they were just moving random. They weren't moving together until we kind of noticed them. And then all of a sudden it was like one rose up higher than the other, and it kind of synced. They synced like they were locked together, and then they just started to rise up. But then they started coming toward us.
Wow.
That was just like we were at the epicenter of something. And I said, get this with your new camera. She goes, okay. So she starts to video them coming over to us. And that video, I've only seen that video once. But I did happen to she tried to send me the whole video over email, but only, I think so many megabytes they allow through, 25 to 30 megabytes. So I only got like 3 or 4 seconds of the video.
To me? Or to you?
Yeah, that she sent to me.
Okay.
And I think I emailed it to you.
Okay.
So you should be able to post that. But yeah, and even that 3 or 4 second video, when I show that video, in presentations, it's always like this, ooh, because it's not like there are lights in the sky. These things are over the parking lot of the Edmonds Ferry Terminal. You can see the cars, you can see the lights, the buildings, and then people are, the foot ferry was just coming in when we first started this, and within 5 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, people were walking by us, checking their cell phones and bumping us, getting in their cars and driving away. And we're going, they're right. I don't know how anybody couldn't have seen them. They either knew what they were not interested, or just didn't see them. They were so preoccupied that I thought at least one person would have stopped seeing these things. You could not notice them. They were right there, and they were large. And we even had the video tested. Her brother works for Canon, and he said they were solid. Because I wondered, is somebody playing a trick here? Is this a trick of the eye? Is this somebody shining something? Or he says they were 150 foot, because he had the cars and the buildings, and I guess in those software programs they can tell distance. They can use trajectory or some sort of calculus to figure out how far away they were. We knew they were within 100 yards, of us, and the whole thing lasted about 8 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? That I don't even want to say it, but people walk around looking. Maybe that's what the phones are for, so that you don't look at the UFOs. Maybe that's why they put them out. But I really want to. I'm kind of upset because the area you're talking about. My wife and we go to Dick's off of 99, and then we go down there to the ferry terminal and eat our dinner right at that park. So she's never going to want to go there again because she's going to be afraid these UFOs are going to show back up.
Oh, yeah.
But the other thing is...
And they've been there. I should tell you that, when I looked on the MUFON website, I was like, whoa, this is a hot spot. Mm-hmm. They had at least 3 or 4 dozen sightings down there.
Wow.
And they had at least a dozen. Well, that morning, the day after my sighting, there were triangle UFOs too at 8 a.m. There was somebody who posted seeing them at 8 a.m. down there. So they're buzzing around there. And I should tell you, after we had dinner, we came out and there was a big Chinook helicopter with a searchlight out in the sound. Making all kinds of noise, and I was like, whoa, what is going on, From Whidbey. I think Whidbey Island is close, straight across there.
Yeah, it is.
from Edmonds. So that was another thing that was kind of like perplexing, that maybe they caught it or looking for it or saw it on radar. Who knows, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's just mention that very quickly. The military topography of Western Washington is you have the Whidbey Island Naval Air Station over on Whidbey, and I'll put the Google map. It'll be here or here, and then also I'll have your UFO footage either here or here for people to watch. But then you go south and you have McCord and the Fort Lewis Joint Base, and then in between, like on Lake Washington, you have various. We go boating on Lake Washington, and we see some kind of, I don't know if it's a NSA site, but there's like an NSA listening post right outside the University of Washington. And so with all of this, and there's military presence over in Bremerton, across the water. And so there is just military everywhere. Is there any indication of any of that stuff you saw that they are associated with our military?
Well, yeah, it's good that you brought that up, because there's a researcher that's just the bomb. I mean, Michael Schratt, and he I don't know, he has worked on top secret aircraft. He's like a mechanic, and he's also a computer. He does computer software engineering, and he's from the Midwest, and he has shown documents of this kind of technology that the Air Force, just not the Navy, but the Air Force, that the Air Force has. And there's different code names for it. I think one of them is Manta. Then there's also the Aurora project, but I don't think that was triangular. But you know, if you start to look at his research, you'll find that there's so much evidence in the black world of these craft, like the TR-3B. Mm-hmm. That's one that's been documented by Ed Fouché, I think. And he said he actually saw, in the 80s, I think, a working TR-3B, which is like they have a 300-foot, I guess, size TR-3B. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you look at all that and you go, well, how can that be? I mean, how did they get from rockets to,
yeah,
or is it just, I don't know. It gets kind of confusing when you start to delve in. But then you look at, Ben Rich and Lockheed Skunk Works. Ben Rich, he was the CEO of Lockheed from I think the late 70s to the early 90s, and he passed away from cancer, I think, in 95. Mm-hmm. But he would do lectures toward the end of his career. He was going to do lectures, and he would say things. Things would slip out. He would talk about the technology that they were, that they were working on, and that they had accomplished, they had figured out. And he always talked about that there was a glitch in physics, that they, that there was this new kind of physics that, is not really talked about. And I've delved into that too. I think you brought up that. I think you've met him, physicist LaViolette, or
Paul LaViolette.
LaViolette, yeah. He talks about that type of technology as well, or that type of physics. The vortice type, electromagnetism and vortices and things like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure that they have, especially if you've ever read any or watched any of Stephen Greer's movies or any of his lectures, and he shows actual documented, white world papers from Popular Science, Popular Mechanics in the 50s. Mm-hmm. They're talking about, they call it G drive is going to be the new wave of the future. This electrogravitic drive, they call it. And it seems like it all kind of went hush in the late 50s. It's like they just went back to rockets, after that. It was just, I think Sputnik. When Sputnik went up, it was like, okay, it's all about rockets, Mm-hmm. It's nothing to do with this stuff. But it's, that doesn't work or something,
Mm-hmm. So let's talk. Well, let me do this first. I'm going to eat my plate of crow and eat my own words. I've been watching. I've always been fascinated ever since. Actually, my interest in UFOs and whatever really has to do with my religious upbringing more than anything else, but I've always been fascinated by this topic. And the things that you have told me have just left me completely shocked and stunned and whatever else. I just am going, wow, because I had come to the conclusion after doing this show, talking to Carrie Cassidy and other people, that, you know, there's no evidence for there's no evidence for a Antarctic civilization, or for a Nazi project, or Nazi UFOs on the moon, and all this stuff that just seems to, I mean, people have just taken, it seems like, little bits and pieces of real evidence and just blown them up to create a whole different, I don't know, like, world, a scenario about it. And so until I talked to you, I was going, you know what, there's no secret space program. The only secret space program, or the only secret about the secret space program, is there isn't one. But you blew me out of the water. You really did. And that really had to do with your triangle UFOs. And because I've seen stuff down at East Eddy Ranch. I haven't seen those. I've seen the ball lights. But I started looking into Mark Mccandlish and his 0 point energy. And so that put us right back into some kind of a secret space program, but not the Corey Good. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but there is a real, actual Air Force whistleblowers coming forth and talking about these craft. So let's talk a little bit about what is the name of that craft. And I'm going to have pictures somewhere here or there, because Steve has these models that he's made of them, and they're actually fascinating. So let's talk about that craft that you have, that model. And it's not the sport model. What is it?
Oh, this one?
No, the other one, that the capsule.
I left it. Let me go get it. Hold on.
Okay.
Or can I do that?
Oh, go ahead. I'll just keep talking.
Right over here.
So yeah, Steve has made these models from a 3D printer, and they're really fascinating. And I think the one that he's going to show us, he actually sells these. And so these are based on artist renderings, and more specifically, they're based upon Mark Mccandlish, who was an Air Force technical illustrator. And so what Steve is showing you here is based on Mark McCandlish's drawings, based on a number of other eyewitnesses that saw these things, either sitting in hangars, or they saw them actually floating out in the desert. A number of people. So can you just hold that there for a second? And I just want to talk about can you pull it back a little bit? What he's pointing out there, the power source of that has something to do with where his finger is. Where his finger is, his index finger is. That what do you call that? That middle section, that has something to do with the drive that is connected to the electrogravitics at the bottom. So I'm not going to get into too much science, but
you can do a whole talk just on this.
Yeah. But that's supposed to be the drive. And the fascinating thing about it is they have patents for this stuff going back to the 1950s and 1960s. So these things that people have been talking about seeing, they're these models, but they're different variations of them. So Steve, tell me, what is the name of that? What does the Air Force call that thing?
Flux liner.
Right, but what is it? It's the ARV or something?
Oh yeah, ARV, alien reproduction vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is one thing I want to make clear to people. This is an alien reproduction vehicle.
Yes.
So there are these flying around that we got the technology, but there are also aliens flying around. So if somebody's going to come out and say, "Oh well, these are all Air Force," well, they're not all Air Force because we got these from the aliens. So I just want to make that clear. This is an alien reproduction vehicle. Now, if you take that technology and then you you make it a little bit bigger, then you start looking at the TR-3B, the triangles.
Yeah.
And what was the third one you have there?
Yeah, the other one, I have a couple more. This one.
This is like show and tell.
Yeah, that's why I really like to have the models, because people can get it's like having the evidence right in front of you, three-dimensionally, and it really makes a difference.
I just want to caution everybody, be careful. Don't touch them. Don't steal them. And
this one here.
Otherwise, there will be no more show and tell on Encounters USA. Okay, so that one. All right. So there's wow. So that is now. This is a purportedly Air Force vehicle.
Well, the person that sent me this, he believes that this is alien.
Okay.
But other people that have done reports on it believe that it is top secret military. But this is actually the Colin Saunders sighting from, I think, March 10th, 1999. And he believes that it's also the Belgium. It looks so much similar to the Belgium sightings in the 90s. I don't know if you've heard of that. Mm-hmm. There was a wave, like a year, thousands of people saw an object just like this flying over Belgium. And they tried to chase it. The Belgian Air Force, they couldn't touch it. It's just gone in a second. It just disappears, So it's some sort of drive that, is way beyond aerodynamics. It doesn't really use. I mean, maybe at slow speeds, it's, it when it's hovering, maybe it's affected, but when it's moving, it's outside of aerodynamics.
Now, Steve, can you hold that there for a second? On the 0 Point Energy documentary that you referred me to, at one point they show one of these things, and that light in the center, that's the power source. So that thing, when that thing fires up, light encompasses the whole thing, and then it becomes like a ball light UFO, and then it disappears.
Yeah.
But you have to watch the 0 Point Energy. I'll leave the link in the description. But that whole thing turns into a big ball, and then it just disappears. So amazing. And then on the outside, you have kind of those designs on there. You think those have something to do with electricity?
Well, it's funny because the person that saw this, he said it looked like it was probably about 150-foot size triangle, and he was within a couple hundred feet of his sighting, Colin Saunders. And this is actually a sighting from, I think, Wales in Great Britain.
Okay.
And he said that it looked like it was floating in water, the way it was very buoyant. And that in the corners here, there were these clouds. It was making its own cloud, like it was cold, And so a lot of people think that these markings on the outside are like refrigerant coils that somehow transfer this. They think it's like a superconductor type technology. Mm-hmm. And I've seen demonstrations like that where they freeze something down to like minus 400 degrees C, and it can levitate. You've seen the superconductor and semiconductor technology. Mm-hmm. So that's within, realm of science today. I mean, that's not anything crazy. So if this, this could be a different type of drive, but it might have combinations, because that's also something that's talked about, is that, even like the B-2 bomber has two different types of propulsion, and a lot of research into that. And I have a friend that works for Boeing that told me some stuff about the B-2 that's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That thing's a huge craft, right? Isn't that's like, it carries so much weaponry on it. It's, I think, a 100-foot wide wingspan. It's like a giant wing. Mm-hmm. And it's triangular, right? Mm-hmm. B-2, in a way, it's isosceles. But yeah, so that's the idea of this one anyway. And he sent this to me. He's building models too, and that's another thing. When all this was going down, it was like synchronicity because, we became kind of friends because we both had sightings, and I had to send him my model. When I got it completed, I haven't shown the other model, but of my sighting, and he said, "Steve, you aren't going to believe this. I'm doing the same thing. I'm building a 3D printed model as well." And so we each sent each other models or pictures. And he's his stuff is much more refined than my stuff. But yeah, the one I have here.
You're just being humble. Do you sell those? Can people buy those from you?
He actually makes one this size now of his sighting, and this is the one that I saw or close to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. So, Steve, do you sell those? Are those available? Because everybody's going to be asking.
Oh, yeah. This one I've sold. I have a bunch of extra models of this one.
Okay.
And I sell these for $60.
Okay. So I will. Is there? How do people? You have a link or something? A website or?
No, I have nothing. I've been trying to sell them through Colin because he's got a good website, but he doesn't. He says I just sell them on eBay.
Okay.
So I did have it on eBay for a while. I could put them back on eBay, I guess.
Well, if you are interested in buying one of Steve's UFOs models, then just send me an email at encountersusa1@gmail.com, and I'll pass that on to him. All right, so Steve, let's talk for a little bit about the propulsion systems in these UFOs. So first of all the propulsion systems, as far as we know, are they the same or are there different types?
Yeah, I think there are different types. I don't know if you know Dave Mason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone out with him on he has incredible equipment to research this as well. And he's caught some videos of triangular UFOs that I've seen. I think one was over Bellevue, Washington. And he said it was at least probably 40,000 feet up, though. And he caught it on video. And the thing about it is, it was invisible. He caught it on he uses a FLIR camera.
Yeah.
And he records everything on DVD. He's got these DVD recorders out in the field. I said, why are you using DVD? He goes, it comes out better. You can see much more, in the result. He just likes DVD, I guess, to record with. Just very hard to set up, though. With all the, but what he gets a signature of not a hot reading, but an ultra cold reading on his FLIR. So these things that he's seen this guy have, they don't have a heat signature. They have a frozen signature. So that alludes back to the Colin Saunders and the Belgium UFO, whereas maybe they're using some sort of, I don't know, anti-energy or using if you have to, I mean, is it like semiconductor or technology? That's a lot different than nuclear-powered aircraft, I would think, unless maybe it's like a fuel cell. Because fuel cell is it's reactor. It's like you're combining, right? You're combining two elements and you get electricity, right? That's fuel cell. I mean, you take oxygen and hydrogen, and you're creating water, but in the process, you're creating energy. It's like a reactor. So maybe this has something like that, where you're combining two different elements or several different elements, and you get a huge amount of energy from that. I don't know. It's kind of beyond me. I mean, I have friends that are physicists that have told me things about how the universe works and how it's confusing when you get down to the subatomic level. Things aren't predictable, or they probably are, but they're not. They're probably affecting the actual experiment. I mean, because we're energy too, right? Human, any kind of life form is energy. We just, it's just different from what we have been trained in. What is energy? Is it just electricity? Is it just explosion? Or is there the esoteric forms of energy all around it? That's the thing, that I just kind of opened my eyes in that Mark Mccandlish story talks about that, the 0 point level, the low vibration where there is energy down there. Low where there's a movement, there's an energy source, and it can be interdimensional. And I forgot to tell you about another guy who's a physicist from Georgia Tech, Nassim Haramein. Have you heard of him?
Nope, I've heard the name.
Yeah, and that clues you into a lot too. He studied he's kind of he's an astrophysicist, but he also combines a lot of sacred geometry in his study. Buckminster Fuller. He studied a lot of his work, and he basically he thinks that there are many universes that are kind of tied together in a way, and energy goes from one to the next. Energy flows from one to the next, kind of like a dam in a river, And he actually came up with a formula, as a mathematical dissertation, I guess, physics dissertation, that shows that everything is kind of connected. The whole universe, every large item down to the smallest thing is connected through a pattern, or it's actually more like the documentary is called The Connected Universe. He shows examples of how things in nature, don't make sense until you look at them from a different perspective. If you look at them not from a mainstream Newtonian, Einstein perspective, but from these newer concepts, which, he himself admits that a lot of these newer concepts of physics are really ancient. They go back to our ancient ancestors, ancient ancestors. And he talks about seeing when he was a kid. He's third generation Iranian, and he came here when I think he was like 6 or 7 to the United States. But he talks about how seeing these at the Osiris, which is the temple in front of the Sphinx, and now archaeologists are saying that they think the Osiris is actually much older than the rest of the site there. It was some pre-civilization. And he saw in physics they call it the vector equilibrium. It's like all these juxtaposition triangles, one over the next over the next. I think it's like 32 triangles when you layer them three-dimensionally. You actually start to get these curved lines in the structure, and you get this mandala. And it's a very famous. It's called, I think they call it not the Tree of Life, but I can't remember what they call it. But he saw that image. Someone thousands and thousands, and maybe a million years ago. Who knows how old that Osiris is? But they had marked that Osiris. That's the only thing on that shows any kind of who made this. Any kind of name was that symbol. And when they looked at it, it's like been burned into the rock. Been burned into that rock. I've seen pictures of it. It's amazing, and that's ancient. Admittedly. So there these technologies that supposedly I saw. That's the thing about it is I don't know if they're aliens. I don't know who they are, but somebody knows something. Somebody knows how to do this. Yeah. Somebody's perfected this. They understand it, and I'm not prejudiced. I'm not saying it's one person or another, but yeah, there is a physics. There is a there is something in nature that exists. I'll admit that now.
Yeah. So there's one of the things that really got me interested and realizing I was going to be eating my own words was I couldn't believe the age of in the Mccandlish video. They're talking about this ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, and the thing sounds like a piece of junk, right? Yeah. It's basically it's made with fiberglass, and you've got some oxygen tanks, and you've got some seats and whatever, and it really doesn't sound like it would even hold up in Earth's atmosphere. And this thing is supposedly flying past the speed of light and going someplace else. So that was really shocking. And the fact that they had taken out patents in the 60s, in the 50s for this thing was mind blowing. And then I had to start thinking, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a secret space program. So those things were, I mean, that piece of, I want to call it the piece of junk, the Millennium Falcon kind of thing, but that may have been the first stage. And then as we progressed, we went to the TR-3B, we got bigger, and possibly, can you, you're a science guy, can you just briefly explain the propulsion on that thing?
Yeah, it's kind of the energy source, according to Mark Mccandlish, is a plasma generating nuclear power. And of course, with all that energy, there's question on, there are these tanks, these H cylinders, if you see them here. There's question on whether that is oxygen, if this is a spacecraft, for the pilots, or whether that's fuel, or some sort of combination. Because if you look in the center here, there's also these towers around underneath the cockpit. Mm-hmm. So there may be a combination of gases that's used as fuel. But then if on the base of this, if you watch the documentary, the people that have witnessed this, it looks kind of like copper. It's kind of like a electrical discharge platform. Mm-hmm. So in a way, the theory is that they had figured out how to make this compact energy plant that's portable. That probably it's a combination of the ether energy around us, mm-hmm. and the gases or whatever substance they're using as the fuel. But once you get the thing started, mm-hmm. it kind of takes on a life of its own. The energy what I'm saying is you don't have to carry this type of physics. You don't have to carry massive quantities of fuel. Mm-hmm. You need it to maneuver the fuel. Maybe there might be another system to help the thing maneuver. But from what I've been told is the captain's cockpit had this large mouse device that could be manipulated. Like it was like the first mouse control that would basically control. There were big cables coming up to that, and basically control the electrical, probably electromagnet. So as you move the ball, it would correspond to these plates on the bottom, and the energy would be discharged accordingly wherever you wanted to move. The pitch, and then it also had a big lever. So that was probably to increase the amount of current so that you could basically create a gravity well. That's the idea of this, is it creates its own gravity. Mm-hmm. And it basically, it's outside the aerodynamics, all the influences. It basically takes itself outside of that.
Okay.
It's propulsion, this new type of propulsion. I know it
is.
Because we've been you got to have lots of fuel if you want to go far. That's just been embedded in our brain. Mm-hmm. But this new physics, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess the 0-point physics concept, mm-hmm. where that you can tap in to kind of the Earth. The Earth has its own energy too. I mean, there's all these frequencies. That's what energy is kind of monitored in hertz. You have all these levels of frequency of energy. The sun can be measured. The amount of photons has a frequency. The Earth's magnetic pulse has a frequency of things like 7 hertz. It's really low. Yeah. And then we run. The stuff we use is 60 hertz. That's our energy. Most of the energy we use is run at a 60 hertz cycle. So that's easily, I guess, it's efficient enough and easy to control. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas this, who knows? I mean, I don't know what. I've never seen one, so and I've been able to look at it, and no one's really said. Even Mark Mccandlish doesn't really know how much energy it uses. There's no numbers to look at. You know what I mean? So in effect, in a way, it's kind of like, well, can't really prove it. It's just been eyewitness accounts. That's all. And his brilliant mind, Mark Mccandlish, he has a really good spatial relations part of his brain, visual cortex, because he's an artist. I mean, the guy, gifted artist,
Well, could you hold that up just for one more second? Because as you see UFO sightings, as you go all the way from McMinnville, Oregon, they all have And when you get into Nazi UFOs and whatever, it's all the same basic shape. And that center place where the power drive is, that is, in most cases, it's actually it's a bubble. And it's a bubble that's put onto that frame there, and that bubble is the life support, I guess, for the crew, etc. And then there are cameras that what we have, closed circuit cameras that we have for at the gas stations, banks, whatever. Well, those are the how the crew sees.
Exactly.
And so I was fascinated because in my book, Deceptions of the Ages, I talk about the Mercury engine that they developed, that basically the Mercury spun. And and the metal in the Mercury, that created the vortex. But in this model, it's a Mercury plasma that's going up and down that center tube. So that was fascinating. So maybe they developed it. But the most amazing thing, and I'm going to just ask you this, not expecting you to know the answer, but is this what the Nazis were working on? And this is what came with Project Paperclip?
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, that if people are aware of that, we brought over some of the best, Nazi scientists after World War II. Mm-hmm. I don't think any of them went to trial, right? They were all, even Werner von Braun was a Nazi, and he came over and headed the whole, helped start the NASA, I think. I think he was involved in that, implementing NASA.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this in. I'm going to do a show on the Nazis, actually not Nazis, but Germans and UFOs. Yeah. And then the guy, not Dorberger, I can't remember what his name is, but Werner von Braun's boss said that famous quote, "Oh, well, we got help from UFOs." Well, what people don't make the connection of is the Nuremberg UFOs of the 1500s. All the way back to the 1500s, they knew there was something up there. And if you look at history of universities and academia and whatever, after that Nuremberg UFO in the 1500s, universities and trade schools and all of these technical colleges sprang up all over Germany.
Interesting.
And so people were there were other things going on, but and nobody ever talks about attributing the rise in the universities in Germany and the rest of Europe to UFOs. But at the same time that Nuremberg thing happened, they really got technically proficient in Germany, and they didn't stop. And anyway, so I think that the idea that they talk about this Maria Orsic and the Thule Society, I think it goes back a lot farther than that. So I'm going to be doing a podcast.
Even the Mahabharata, which is an ancient, writing, Indian writing, talks about these battles, sky battles, between the gods. And they talk about how the gods had these, they pick people up in these Vermanas.
Yeah.
And that's thousands of years ago. And take them all over,
Yeah. Now, Steve, I did a podcast a while ago about this. What is her name? The nurse at Roswell, and she interviewed the alien. Yeah. And the alien told her all these things. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was that they said the Indian texts, I don't know what is the matter with me today, but what is it?
The Bhagavad Gita. And
one of those. They said that the ones that talk about the UFOs and these wars in heaven, whatever, they said that this alien told this nurse that those were just like folk tales from their civilization, that they had set up a base in the Himalayas, and they just passed these folk tales on to the people there, and they took them on as a religion. And so one of the things that this alien said was they were never meant to be any kind of a religion. They were just folk tales. So So I thought that was interesting, and I'm not trying to step on any religious toes or whatever. This is from this interview with this alien. So, but then it goes into talking about different. This alien is from the domain, and they're kicking out this old empire group, and so it's really weird, but as
Star
crazy.
Wars.
What it's exactly Star Wars.
Star Wars, you know?
Yeah, and that they it's really crazy. I mean, you got to watch it because it gets really, really loopy, but it does kind of there. I mean, you can just go, oh, it's just a bunch of garbage, but there are some things like talking about the Vimanas and other things where. You go, wow, yeah, maybe that did happen. And then I also look at remote viewing, and I'd like to get Courtney Brown, because they've done a lot of stuff with the Nuremberg UFOs, etc. And they really are confirming that over Nuremberg, these people saw a real live alien Star Wars type extraterrestrial battle, and it really freaked them out. So like people became researchers with Bigfoot and UFOs. Well, these Germans really went to town.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they were probably a good 25 years ahead of anyone with their technology. You know, pre-World War II even.
Yeah,
I think they had the V1, V2 rockets became our Apollo 1 and 2. You know, they became our Apollo or Mercury project pre-Apollo. But you know, I'm doing a talk in March, and I've been doing research on. An even more recent technological leap, if you want to say it, that happened in the 19th century. I think I was telling you about this. Charles Duchow, a Prussian immigrant who's an engineer, came over here and got involved with the Sonoro Aero Club in the 1850s, and they were developing these flying machines way before the Wright brothers. And these weren't dirigibles. Actual flying machines. They had lift. They were like anti-gravity type in the 1850s. I'm just kind of delving into this now, and yeah, and they used a special kind of gas to create the lift. They would create the energy to tap in, I guess, tap into this ether type of energy. You know. That's really intriguing that there was a whole other sighting. I mean, there were actual sightings in 1896 to 1897. There were thousands of people that saw these things flying from west to east, from California to Texas to the Midwest. And you start following the money. A lot of this comes from researcher Walter Boyer. Have you heard of him?
Nope.
Yeah, he really done the good work. He's done most of the work on that and kind of separated the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. He's very good at research. I mean, he looks at documents, very good. And he follows the money. And the money, guess where it came from?
Where?
Germany.
Really?
Yep. A lot of German investors, and then. You know, there were German nationalists, because back then in the 1850s, there was no Germany. It was just like, states. And the goal was to unify and create a Germany. And this technology, he believes, was what they were trying to develop. And they could hide it over here because the population was not that great. And you had all this great weather here where you could test it out. And so there were some really great engineers in the United States. You know, and he thinks that really this is where the technology started, and then it moved back over there. They brought it back after too much heat. But yeah, there was it's so weird that there was a whole other century of a similar thing where people were seeing flying objects they couldn't. I mean, there were like Zeppelins and stuff back then too, and these things were much different looking. Though they had big wheels and magnets and motors, and it's hard to believe they had all that, back then. But it basically comes from his book. Duchow was an artist too, and he drew thousands of pictures, I guess. And they're in an art gallery, I think, in somewhere back east. they show them regularly, his works, which almost ended up in the trash. I mean, some art dealer had thrown these away in the 60s. They found them, and this guy Peter Nellis, I think, he discovered them and saved them from thrown away. They were just going to be tossed away, and they look kind of like, remember the psychedelic era, the art that was back then in the 60s. They look similar to that, but they're not the colors. They're earth tone colors. But the way he drew it's almost like somebody got the idea from him and started drawing that way in the 60s, you know. It's funny. It's definitely, most of these drawings were done in I think between 1880 and 1920. When he drew a lot of these. But that's going to be on my next, I'm going to do in March 15th at 1 p.m. at the Greenwood Library in Seattle. I'm going to do another lecture on this, having to do with, what's really out there. You know, is it just people from another star system, or is it advanced? Is there an advanced civilization here, that is hidden, either dimensionally or in the Earth, or who knows? It's an old planet. I mean, if you believe that the Earth is as old as it is, there's many possibilities, right? I mean, if you're open-minded enough, you can see that,
Well, Steve, this has just been really just incredible. I really wanted to spend some time going into the different types of propulsion, but it might get a little bit dry. So I think now is probably a good time to cut this off until our next, until I bring you back on again. So I've got you down for March 15th, 1 p.m. in Seattle. And what's the library?
The Greenwood Library. Okay.
And do you have any more speaking engagements coming up?
Nope.
Okay. And I would like, if you're going to start looking into this stuff, try to find where did that ARV originate? Yeah. That would be a really interesting thing to find out, because a piece of junk like that, I mean, we had the technology to build that thing back in the 30s. So I don't know about the plasma, but I think that if you got the right people together, I mean, they built an atomic bomb. They probably could have built that piece of junk. Anyway, and if you want to get Steve's models, then just send me an email at encountersusa1@gmail.com. Well, Steve, any parting words for our listeners?
Just keep looking up.
Yeah, get off the cell phones.
I'm not the only one that has seen these. There's millions of people that have seen these. I don't know how. I just was in the right place at the right time, I guess, But yeah, you can see these too if you spend enough time and go out. There's another guy that does a lot of videos of these. Not only Dave Mason, but there's another guy, Lee
Strauss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even get to mention that, but I had Lee on here a few weeks ago, and there are a lot of sightings down at SeaTac, and they've been allowed. I think they're basically staked out. I think Dave's involved also. But they're staked out at somebody's house down by SeaTac because these things keep showing up right over basically the Homeland Security building. So right over the highway, right during rush hour.
Amazing.
So the question is it a PSYOP? We don't know.
Yeah, I didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other issue, right?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that next time we have you on, Steve.
Okay.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in to Encounters USA. And I just want to encourage you, if you'd like to get one of these models, contact me. Don't miss Steve's lecture, because he has so much information and I've gone to these MUFON things, and when you go see Steve, you're going to walk away going, oh my gosh, what's going on? So it's not going to be a bunch of warmed over stuff. It's going to be a bunch of real original new material. So with that, if you are in Edmonds, Washington, or anywhere with Steve Leumbruno, remember what we say, always watch your back. Thanks for joining us on Encounters USA. Remember, if you have comments, please leave them in the comments section on YouTube and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell while you're at it. Don't forget, if you'd like to be a guest on Encounters USA, just send us an email at encountersusa1@gmail.com and just put podcast guest in the subject line. Now, please remember that all of the guests' opinions on Encounters USA are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast host nor the podcast sponsors. So thank you, and don't forget, when you're out in the woods looking for aliens, Bigfoot, or Dogman, always watch your back.